Hello, I'm Sarah Barrett Neal, Gallery Manager with the Glen Arbor Arts Center. Today I'm in conversation with Benzie County artist Claudia Keglovitz, whose exhibition, Wild Things, is an examination of some ecologically themed collages. They're going to be on display in the lobby gallery throughout the fall and into the early winter. Hi, Claudia, and welcome.
Good morning, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm delighted to be talking with you. Talk about the collages you'll be exhibiting in Wild Things. When a visitor comes into the building and begins to look at your work, what do you want them to know?
Well, I'd like them to be aware of the fact that pretty much everything, including the substrate, is recycled material. You may find a 100-year-old barnwood base, and on top of that, you're going to find garbage, literally garbage that I might have found on a trail or a beach or in a parking lot, in addition to vintage fabrics, tin cans, hand-me-down t-shirts, a plethora of things. And it's really, I find, quite interesting to poke around and look for the details of what's involved in the piece. And I think it speaks for itself that there is an homage made to the natural world and the animals in it. So I'm hoping that the viewers can find some kind of interest or message that they can take with them.
So when looking at your stuff, you want people to stand back and take in the whole, but you're encouraging them to get close and look at the pieces and parts.
Exactly. From all different levels too. Sometimes even the nooks and crannies have something that you can find as a little mysterious extra bonus, but yes, from far away as well.
Your collages are built in layers, and one can see that when they get closer. From scrap materials, as you're describing, to things torn from magazines, to things you found along the way. So talk about the philosophy of reuse that's inherent to the construction of these collages.
Absolutely. It's something that I've always naturally been attracted to. I've always wanted to make things from the reuse part of it. And I think I've always had a strange fascination with rust. You know, the patina of a piece of a rusty pop can on the side of a road to me is exquisitely beautiful. And using magazines, it doesn't matter if it's something from the 1950s, like a Life magazine with Marilyn Monroe in it, to a glossy art magazine. It's just like, what can this material, this thing that it could end up in a landfill, what kind of new life can we as people breathe into it instead of just tossing it away? And how can it have a different meaning? Something that we can teach our children. Like, not everything is to be tossed away. We can do something. We don't all have to go to the store and buy new every single time. And I don't ever want to be preachy, but for me, it's a passion project.
Mm-hmm. Claudia, I'm going to share one of your compositions here as we're talking, your STP lady.
Yeah.
You work into your compositions a lot of text and layers of words. And we can look at the words and the layers as not only shapes and marks, but do they have meaning? So talk about how you view bringing words into your compositions.
Yeah. Now, I'd be, remiss to say that every single word that I've ever cut out means something, but oftentimes there's a message in the magazine that informs the piece I'm working on. And in this case, with the STP, when I got this door this just old random used door. I immediately said, this sticker must stay. And the STP had to stay there. I didn't know how it was going to be incorporated in the piece, but now STP stands for Save the Planet. And that just kind of happened like that. But definitely when I'm using magazines, words pop out and I think, this informs this piece. I've got to weave it into the project. Sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. Other times new words, new images appear.
Let me bring in another image, and this one will have even more relevance to what we're talking about. Lots of words visible in this one, not only layered and kind of ghosting through from the back, but right on top. So go ahead, talk about this one.
Sure. This one, as you said, Sarah, has lots of layers. And oftentimes when I start, especially on the cradle board, I will just essentially attack it with layers of color, with hopefully no fear involved, and then build up from there. And then, as I said before, one thing kind of organically leads to another, informs the piece as it goes. So I think I started with, for example, the woman's profile from a Life magazine. And I'm like, well, what is she looking at? What is the big deal? Well, the flower came later. And then the You're Invited, what are you invited to, of course, came from the DIA exhibit a number of years ago for the Van Gogh exhibit. So it kind of organically developed into a story that I was not sure was being told. It kind of grew from the profile.
And you painted the trillium, the flower.
Yes, and I used sketches and photographs that I had taken on hikes and trails as the trilliums come out every year. And I love the trilliums. So yeah, that was taken from photographs and sketches.
So your collages are mixed media in the truest sense.
Yes, they're absolutely mixed media. And in fact, this one is acrylic and it's also a collage, but there's also India ink involved too. Charcoal, colored pencils, house paint, etc. So there's sometimes a whole plethora of different materials used.
Alrighty. The ecological themes that seem to be a unifying thread in your collages are something, an interest that goes back to you being a kid. When we talked earlier, you told me a delightful story about riding your bicycle to the Detroit Zoo. Why don't you talk about that in terms of how that has evolved into your work today?
Oh, sure. So as a kid, I absolutely adored animals, and my whole theme or my whole mission was to become a zoologist, and protect and save species like the harp seals. And I went to work for the World Wildlife Fund and held car washes for them. But I used to ride my bike to the Detroit Zoo, several miles up the road on Woodward, with my backpack and a sketchbook. And I would sketch the animals and take notes on their animal behavior. But I soon found out I was way more interested in the art part of drawing and painting the animals than I was about the science part, hence going to school for art, instead of the science and the zoology and the organism part of it. But yeah, so this has been a lifelong quest with the natural world, and paying attention to how we are stewards of the earth and the animals and the species that reside and are part of the earth, and to express it artistically and to help others do the same.
You've taken a gentle approach to communicating a message and messages about which you're very passionate. You're not hammering anybody over the head with your thoughts about humans' behavior on the earth. So talk about the decision to take a gentler approach.
I think where I'm coming from is that, you know, we are citizens of planet Earth, and that I would like to hope that I leave the planet and my behavior, that I leave the planet better for my grandchildren and for people that come after me. And I think the main thing is to lead by example. And I think just my work and my words and my actions is the best that I personally can do as a legacy, as a person from Earth, so to speak, an Earthling.
Think out loud a little bit for us about how you think visual art can be a tool in this mission to communicate these things about which you're so passionate.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that when I talk about my work, when people have found an interest in it, that when they realize that, oh, I would have never thought that you could use like my dad's old ties and work, or oh, I have all kinds of purses that I threw out, and I think that kind of lesson that I don't necessarily people understand that, we don't always have to buy a new thing. We can either mend it, or we can express it in a different way, or the whole thing that we've been saying for years: reduce, reuse, recycle. I think there are a lot of lessons in that. And it doesn't have to be where someone's kicking and screaming and saying, you have to do all these things in order for us to, maintain the planet or help, have it be sustainable. And so I think that, especially kids, because I am a teacher and I love teaching. When you show kids the things that you can do with found objects, discarded objects, they get excited because there is so many different ways that you can approach it, like taking a recycled book and turning it into a journal or a junk journal or a sketchbook, can be so personal, and you're putting things in it like maybe concert tickets or bands that you're interested in. So there's, I think, multiple levels that you can reach people in the approach with the way I create and express myself through art, and the way I teach and talk to people about my work. I think I'm getting better as an artist about talking about my work. I think at first I felt a little maybe self-aware and a little nervous about it, but I think I'm getting more comfortable talking about what my work represents and what I'm trying to say.
You're coming off a 30-plus year career teaching art in the public schools in southeastern Michigan. So you weren't not doing your own work during that period of time, but talk about the challenges of trying to have a full-time career and try to bring to life some of the ideas you want to work on in your studio.
Oh, great question, and thanks for asking that. Yes, I loved my career teaching, absolutely loved it, and I will continue to always teach. It's truly in my heart. And I really feel like kids need art in their lives, even they don't have to be artists. So one of the things that I learned is that I spent so many years trying to get kids to maybe be courageous and push themselves more creatively. Things like where maybe they're staring at a blank piece of paper, like, I don't know where to start. It's like, start by making some marks. Start by making some lines. Start by making some shapes. Start by making some colors. And then It doesn't have to be anything serious. And I find myself taking my own advice that I gave my kids for so many years. And if I'm in the studio and I'm stuck on something and I'm like, "Oh, I just can't get this," and I can hear that other teacher voice going, "Step away and look back," you know, phone a friend maybe for a critique, you know. So I hear all those advice things, or take out another piece of paper and sketch out some ideas. I hear that teacher voice on my shoulder going, you have like lots of tools in your toolbox to go to. So that's how it informed my practice. Because I committed myself to my teaching. I did summer camps with students every year with the teenagers, and I did art club every week with the kids. So it really was another passion project for me to be teaching art.
How did you carve out time to do your own work during those years?
My work during those years were mostly in the summer when I could focus more. And then a lot of times when I did the art clubs with the kids, I would sit down and work with them, kind of working on collaborations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm so happy about now is that I can change the balance. So instead of teaching and art, now I can go art and teaching. And so that balance to me now is what I've worked for, to be able to do the full-time art and the part-time teaching.
I always am interested with creative people what their favorite tools are. So you have some to share with us today.
As a matter of fact, I do. Um, when I find the metal, whether it's an old tin can, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just reused in the kitchen, or something on the street. This hammer, which I honestly don't know how I acquired it. It's somebody somewhere, but it's super cool. You can rip things to shreds with this end, or it has this nice flat handle, or this right flat thing to smash things. So this hammer is one of my favorite tools. And then freebies, we always have gift cards and plastic things, paint scrapers. And you can cut these into shapes too to make textures. And then last but not least, the things you can buy at the art store, the paint scrapers with the unique textures on the edges
Mm-hmm.
for scraping. So those are a few of my favorites.
Uh, when you bring in a paint scraper, an old credit card or some kind of plastic card that comes in the mail, talk about the scraping uh, technique. You're not using a paintbrush, but you're still moving paint around. So what is this paint scraper doing differently for you?
Well, one thing I wanted to add about that is it's extremely therapeutic to put basically squeezing raw paint onto the canvas and then essentially squeegeeing it around on the canvas and driving it around, and you get excess paint and you just like, oh, I'll just put this here and come back for it later. And you can curve and you can cut into. The thing I didn't pull out, which is also a favorite, is those driftwood sticks you might find. They're just like really smooth wash sticks. I use those too, and just scratch into the wet paint after I've scraped it. So, and I know that if I have students, whether they're adults or teenagers, um, people love doing this because the success rate is wonderful. You can get a gorgeous painting service or just a gorgeous painting in no time flat. It's just um, it's meditative. It's really nice.
It, yeah, it's a total hands-on thing, isn't it?
Yes, and be prepared to have paint all over you too. So, but it's great, and it's a great way to get rid of that white or that plain surface straight away. You can do it a lot or a little, because that's one of the things that I know is intimidating for people. If you're faced with a white canvas or a white sheet of paper and they're just like, what? Where do I start? And I think we need to take away that mystique. An artist just walk up to the canvas and just go, voila.
Sometimes people feel so much paralysis, unable to take the first step because the materials feel precious.
Yes.
And I can't rip up this piece of paper because it's too special, or this or that or the other thing. The way you work is just a full body experience. You just dive in and you don't think too long. You don't dither over it, but you just get to work.
Yeah, I find that's the best way. The work tends to be more successful when I work in an intuitive manner. If I'm already stressed out, if I come into the studio and something's bothering me, I need to go for a walk first. I need to center myself first, because it is an intuitive process. There are times if there's something on your mind that you can just say, okay, I just need to dive into this, but you got to be careful. Yes, if I allow myself to just organically and intuitively begin working, that's when the good stuff happens. And I think anyone can relate to that, whether they're a tennis player or crochet or sewing or cooking. If you get into the flow, you're going to be way more successful, and it's going to be a more enjoyable experience in the studio, in the kitchen, or wherever you're working.
I want to remind everyone that Claudia's work is on exhibit in the Art Center's lobby gallery, and it'll be up there through December 18. And you can also look at Claudia's work online. We've created a web page for it. So go to glenarborart.org and click on the exhibits tab. Thanks, Claudia. You are such a joy to talk to. Your work is joyful, and I think that there will be so many people who will think differently about the stuff in their world when they look at your stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having a chat with me today, Sarah. I appreciate everything that you do for the artists and everybody who's involved in Glen Arbor. And I just really am grateful for being part of Glen Arbor Art Center and the Glen Arbor community.
And thanks to everyone for watching today. We'll see you next time.